We are back.
We're back.
Episode number 206.
Oh gosh, now I have to start using three hands again.
So I thought it'd be kind of nice if we added some nice music into our show. What do you guys think of that?
That was amazing.
Yeah. If we don't get arrested.
How's that? This will be our background music the whole time. Kidding.
That ought to make Fraser Dawson just really happy. Happy as a little girl.
We already got some comments. What's up, Fraser Dawson? Scott Beatley, Tony Clem, Scotty Adams. Welcome.
Yes, Fraser, I look like Santa Claus, and you know what? Sometimes that makes you a lot of money when you look like Santa Claus. What?
You talking about Santa porn?
No, I'm not. No, definitely not talking about that. And if it was Santa porn, you would not see it anywhere.
Yes, Carcass is on OnlyFans.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not naked. He always has a Santa hat on.
That's right.
So he's good there.
That's
Santa
right.
Carcass.
Yeah, I'm lobbying for equal pay for male models on OnlyFans. So, especially that look like Santa Claus.
Right on. Let's start getting into it. What do you guys got? Any shout outs you want to do?
I got nothing.
No, I really got nothing either. But I tell you what, man, I've seen some. I had a little hope on Saturday. We went to my company's Christmas party and we had a good time, except it was over at 9. And we had a friend that had a birthday, and he just said, "Hey, I'm down here at this place. Just come on down and hang out." And man, we saw a band called Odious, a bunch of young kids, 15, 16 years old. And I promise you, it was like a throwback to 87, 86, full blown bullet belts and puffy hair and high top Reeboks and tight jeans. And man, those dudes ripped. They were really impressive. And I thought, well, maybe the youth of today are starting to get it after all, because they're delving into their parents' record collections and so forth, and they're starting to understand what we got to go through back in our youth. But anyway, other than that, yeah, nothing really. Just there's just tons of good music out there, man. It's hard to consume it all.
For sure. You got anything, Steve?
Nope, nothing for me.
I got a nice little Christmas present, an early Christmas present in the mail, which I just had in my hand and put down in front of me.
What?
This is the
oh, nice.
Oh,
Black
wow.
Sabbath Live Evil box set.
I bought the LP box. Still haven't opened it.
I haven't opened this one yet either. This is a gift from my friend Bill Bafford. So
didn't I give you one of the other ones? Didn't I give you Paranoid or something?
You gave me.
Oh, look at that.
I was just playing it.
I was looking for my box set of Paranoid.
I was on a show. I forgot what the name of it. Rock Hall or something like that on Saturday afternoon with a guy from the UK and a guy from Canada. Both are really cool guys. It was kind of a clusterfuck, to use a military term, but it was still fun to do. We did all Black Sabbath, Ozzy Black Sabbath. We rated the first 6 Black Sabbath albums. So it was fun, but there was so many more technical glitches than we've ever had on this one.
More production value, you mean?
But at least they went. I mean, at least they didn't forget to go live. We've done that a couple times.
Yeah.
So
forgotten to introduce our guest, just Gene
Yeah.
Hoglan. No big deal. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyhow, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so let's get into it. We're gonna do 10 or so records that should be in everybody's collection.
Yeah, and this could be just about anything, because as I was telling Scott beforehand, I started collecting long before they were out of diapers. So I have either it's an advantage or a disadvantage, one of the two, because heavy metal in my upbringing was the likes of Deep Purple and Nugent and Aerosmith and so forth. So what caused me, basically what I pulled were the 10 most important records that caused me to delve into other things, namely metal.
Cool.
and stuff that I still listen to this day.
Same here on all these. So why don't you go first? We'll go counterclockwise, and I'll go last.
Okay. As he checks out,
I don't know if he did that on purpose.
I don't know if he did that on purpose either. But I guess we're gonna just keep going.
I did.
Oh.
I need to go do something real quick. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So I like you, I can't pull just 10, and I pulled a couple of extras. So I couldn't decide. I needed to include all of these records because I think every metalhead should have them. The first one of those is
Ooh,
Opeth.
that's a great album.
Opeth Pale Communion.
Oh my God, that's so good.
These guys started off in typical Swedish fashion as such heavy, brutal, gurgling, gargling, whatever, and it has turned into just the most beautiful record listening experience ever. If you like jazz fusion, or if you like kind of Deep Purple doing jazz fusion, you'll love this record. Clean vocals.
I didn't like that record when I first heard it, and then I went on a trip and listened to it all the way through like 3 times.
Yeah,
And that's probably my favorite Opeth album now. It's just so good.
yeah, it is. And so I couldn't decide. I needed to throw out one of these 3, and I couldn't do it. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. The Blood Incantation, Hidden Species of the Human Race. This is so interesting to me. It's not your typical death metal record. There's also elements, as everyone's complained and as everybody's adulated, of the ambient feeling and jazz fusion and so forth. I think this is so interesting that you need it in your collection. And then here's a sleeper. I know everyone thought I'm going to have a Carcass record in here, but this album right here, Repulsion, Horrified, it was the only full length they've done. This one actually has it's on red vinyl and it has all their demos on it. But I can listen to this thing on a loop day after day, and it's all about the riff to me. It's so many riffs, very few leads, if any. And man, I love Repulsion. I think that everybody that's into more speedy type metal, they would listen to it like I do on a loop. So all 3 of those records I listen to at least once a month, just because.
Wasn't that Repulsion like 87 too? Wasn't
yeah.
it? That's what I thought.
Old. It was early in my in my solace journey to find faster, heavier, speedier metal, and everybody wants them. Even some of my very knowledgeable friends claim that they're grindcore, but this is not grindcore. It is
the whole grindcore thing's always, I've talked about this, has always been stupid to me anyway. Carcass is grindcore, but when they came out, that was death metal to everybody.
Sure.
Nobody called it grindcore back then. We all called it death metal.
Sure.
But
anyway, so Repulsion, Horrified, and the Blood Incantation. In fact, you could just pick them, any one of the Blood Incantations, and then the Opeth Pale Communion. They truly have to be in your collection. They just do. Steve-O?
Yeah, so there's a couple that kind of fell outside of my top 10, but I had to mention them. I mean, these are all albums that didn't just make me a metalhead. These are the stuff that made me want to play drums, that made me want to be a musician in the first place. But you've got to mention Metallica. They didn't make my top 10, but Ride the Lightning is my favorite Metallica album. I think it's one of the best albums of the 80s. It's just, it was just perfect. Everything on this album is just perfect. And I know everybody loves Master. Master's actually my 4th favorite of their 80s albums. That's never been a favorite of mine. But another one, this was huge to me. A buddy of mine gave me this when did this come out? Maybe a year after it came out. I had never heard of the band. He never got the cassette back. I ended up having to pay him $10 for the cassette because I refused to give it back to him. But it's a self-titled Metal Church album.
Oh gosh, of course.
This was such a turning point for me when I heard this album. I couldn't stop playing this. I probably played it 3 times a day for at least a year after this came out. And then to get to my top 10. So the number 10 spot for me, where did it go? I had to put a little bit of death metal in here. Heartwork.
Love that album.
I had to do it.
Somehow I knew that you or somebody would pull that out of the fire.
Necroticism is actually my favorite album, but it's something that every metalhead should have. This was just the perfect transition to come out at the perfect time. I think Necroticism was actually the first melodic death metal album. This is definitely more melodic, and I mean, this started a whole new genre and completely changed metal. So
it says ultimate. Why is it the ultimate edition? That's why I blew it up so I could read it.
It's got
it's got the second disc is the rough cuts.
Is that the Par Street demos?
Yeah, all the demos.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Par Street demos.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Same thing. Necroticism is actually my favorite Carcass, but Heartwork is a necessity for any metalhead for sure. Scott?
And that was an album. A lot of people, a lot of people are into death metal and black metal now. Don't realize how out there it was when that came out.
Oh, yeah, I was
an album that turned a lot of people onto death metal that had never listened to it before.
Well, I actually bought that. Was in the parking lot of Vinyl Edge, and Fraser can attest to where that was. It was a long time record store in Houston that eventually moved to downtown. But I bought it, plugged it in, and listened to it because at the time you could get a T-shirt with it.
Oh, that's cool.
And I listened to it, and I thought, wait a minute, this is not Carcass. This is something different.
Yeah.
And I started to walk in and return it because it was so weird to me. But then I just listened to the whole thing, and then once I had run through it the second time, it was leaving a definite impression. So, but it was weird, wildly different.
Oh yeah,
and this was right after they had signed to that huge label with Columbia, and Earache had merged, and everyone's like, well, here they sold out too, just like Metallica. But anyway.
I kind of knew it was coming because I was at Zia about 6 months earlier when the Heartwork EP came out, and they had it on the listening station, and I actually got a chance to listen to that, and I was blown away by that, and I grabbed that, and then I was actually at the midnight release back when they did midnight releases for the Carcass album,
right?
And I had a big old poster on the wall that came with it, and a bunch of other ephemera. But it'll always be a favorite.
Yep.
All right, I'll start off with ABBA, Arrival.
No, you're not. Well, I don't know. Maybe you are. We don't discriminate here.
Donnie and Marie collection of anybody I've ever met.
Yeah, it's actually
you haven't been to my house, Steve.
The Donnie and Marie collection is sitting out there, and it will soon be going to Goodwill. And I'm not kidding; it's a pile about this big of Donnie and Marie records that's going to them. Anyhow, so I'll do the same thing as Carcass did and get number 10. But I mean, this seems to me like it's just a given. If you don't have this, you don't even know what heavy metal is. This was I'm going to say 90% of the historians out there are going to say this was, the beginnings of true heavy metal. Although these days you're going to get people arguing with you that Slayer was the first metal band. And I'm not even kidding.
Well, and I'll just hold it up since you pulled it out and we're on the same page.
Yep. And
well, geez, Scott,
but then
I
couldn't decide because I think these two are like both need to be in your collection. They're just such great albums. And again, this is what 72, 71. This is early heavy metal, and I know people argue with me to death, but there couldn't have been a new wave of heavy metal if there wasn't a first wave of heavy metal coming out of the UK.
I bought that thing at the Base Commissary. It was the fourth album that I ever purchased with my own money, and I thought nothing can top this. And then I found In Rock, and I went, well,
In Rock is so good.
Maybe it did.
Yeah, I love them both. It's hard to say.
I love them both, but I get burned out on Machine Head. I never get burned out on In Rock. I could play that nonstop.
I don't. I mean, Smoke on the Water is the only one I really get burned out on. The rest of it I love. So, but anyhow, and then so we get to number 10, staying in the 70s. So one of those other first wave of British heavy metal bands, and it's not Led Zeppelin. It is.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Budgie,
I didn't even think about Kill.
So I was trying to decide. I was trying to pick, maybe the Scorpions, or there's just so many great albums that it was hard to only pick 10. And I these are the only 70s albums I really pulled. So, but this is probably my favorite album. This is the one that Metallica was always touting, and actually covering. I think Crash Course for Brain Surgery is on here, among others.
Yep.
But yeah, this is UK heavy metal from the 70s. So one of the first wave of British heavy metal bands. That's my number 10.
Okay, well, I don't have mine in any specific order. I just have a pile of 10 records. And since you mentioned the magic word, I'm just going to get it out of the way.
Right on.
Scorpions.
Mine aren't really in order either, by the way. It's just number 10 out of the 10.
Scorpions Lonesome Crow. Nobody knows about this record. It's their very first release, full-length release. It's very proggy. It's but once again, I'm coming from a background of a classically trained musician and jazz, and that was my background. And this thing had elements of all the above. Plus, it had just killer once again riffs, and I mean Schenker and Uli John battling back and forth. And their guitar battle was epic on this record. So I really dig Scorpions Lonesome Crow. I listened to it once again. I list all these albums that I'm going to show you today. I listen to at least once a month, sometimes this one twice a month. I don't know why. There's just something magic about it. So Scorpions Lonesome Crow, one of the 10 records I think that every metalhead should have.
Yeah, I would have if I would have pulled the Scorpions, I would have probably pulled In Trance, because that's the one I listened to a lot.
That's going to be mine right there.
There
you go.
In Trance.
Gee, we don't think the same on this show.
Man, the song In Trance I think is one of the best solos ever put to record. It's just a fantastic album. This is my favorite Scorpions. I love everything that the Scorpions did through about 83, but this is always the one I go to. I just listened to this 2 days ago. That's why it happens to be sitting here on cassette. But this one I play constantly, and I have been for at least 20 years.
There you go. Fraser asked if anybody liked Girl School. Not part of my list, but I just happen to have this single sitting right here because I listened to it just yesterday. So
and they're on tour again, by the way.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they did an album right before the pandemic. They released an album.
It's crazy.
Oh, all right. Well, am I up?
Yep.
My next one, I actually lied. I have one more 70s album.
Uh-oh. It's hard to argue.
I mean, would power metal exist without this album? It's hard to say that, but this one kind of laid the blueprint for that sound, in my opinion.
Well, and I asked myself when that thing came out, what could Richie do that's going to top Deep Purple? Well, that's a pretty good start right there.
Yeah, this one. I mean, the first 3 albums, especially the second and third albums, are just brilliant.
I always love that album art too. Who could take a rainbow and make it look metal on an album cover?
Right.
Well, there you go.
I love it so much. I got a giant 4x4 banner hanging on my ceiling over there. This album cover. So
there you go.
Yeah, maybe one of these days we'll do a favorite album covers show. I'm sure we've done
that would be right up there on one.
Yep, me too. So there you go. That's my number 9.
Okay.
I mean, you got Ronnie. First of all, you got Ronnie. Look at the list: Ronnie James Dio, Kazi Powell, Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Bain, and Tony Carey on keyboards. I mean, other than Tony Carey, who is now well known, but he wasn't that well known back then. But still,
I forgot about Jimmy Bain.
These guys are just all legends.
Yeah.
And is Tony Carey still alive? So 3 of the 5 of them are gone.
Oh, yeah.
Because Jimmy Bain passed away, Ronnie James Dio passed away, and Kazi Powell are all gone.
Yeah.
And one of them's playing folk music.
You know what? When an album's one of your favorites, when you have multiple copies, and this is one of those ones that I have. I got a Japanese pressing, and I've got the old pressing that I've had for decades that I still use to play. And
you have the one on Oyster?
Got it on CD.
Do you have it on Oyster Records?
I believe the other one I have is on Oyster Records.
I have an Oyster copy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one here is on Niji.
Oh, wow. Well, speaking of something you have multiple copies of, Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs.
I had a feeling that was coming up.
Dude, you want to talk about a weird kind of heaviness. I mean, I think because Black Sabbath was basically, let's admit it, they were basically a blues band, correct? That played.
Yeah, they started off as Earth. Yep.
Yeah, that down-tuned there a little bit, and man, this Robin Trower has a certain heaviness to it that is just unbeatable. And I listen to this over and over again. In fact, I was in Walmart one day just shopping for groceries or doing whatever, and I heard Day of the Eagle of all things. So somebody invaded the Walmart radio station and was playing some killer classic rock deep cuts. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's Headbanging Zulu. Sorry.
yep. Here's another one. Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs. Buy it now.
Did you patch this through to your channel yet, Scott?
No, not yet. It'll soon. I just gotta. It gave me an error message, so I'll figure it out. But
okay. So my next one, I'm surprised Scott hasn't shown this. I believe this is my last. No, it's not my last '70s album, but I had to mention this because this is one of the albums that got me into heavy music.
Yep, that I almost pulled it, but I was like, people are gonna expect me to show that one, so I'm not showing it.
Yeah.
I had it in my hand, Scott. So
yeah,
I'm glad.
I love.
It's such a heavy record for '76.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And I'm still looking for. I've talked to Scott about this. There's a quad version of it that the mix is completely different. Every song is mixed different, and it blew me away how good it is. On Back in the Saddle, you can hear horses galloping. Oh, dude, it's so good, but it's hard to find it. Every time I see it, it's like VG for $100. I'm not going to pay that much for.
Do you have a quad? Do you have quad capability?
You don't need it.
Well, I know you don't need it, but
yeah.
I just wondered if anyone's, because I know that it even sounds better even if you have a good stereo system.
Yeah.
It'll sound great. I just wondered if anybody had heard it.
My buddy Patrick that I do the Friday night stream with played. He digitized it and he was playing it. And when you play it through the headphones, the mix is just mind blowing. That whole album. So I'm really trying to find that, and I want to find the quad of Toys in the Attic too.
Oh yeah, I love that one part where it zips through your brain.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna skip into the '80s now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Restless.
Wow.
I mean, this album is just so manic. I remember hearing, Fast as a Shark for the first time. It was at like an '83, and thinking, oh my gosh, can there be anything faster than that?
Yeah.
And then of course Metallica released Whiplash that same year, and that kind of blew me away too. But yeah, I mean, Fast as a Shark, the song is a proto thrash song.
Sure.
Steady double bass, that chunky E chord. But anyhow, the whole album is just fantastic. This is one I just never ever tire of.
Except doesn't get enough credit for how much they brought. I mean, their first couple albums almost had a punk sound to them, and then they had almost a thrash sound. I mean, they were so influential in so many different areas, and never get the credit for all that they did.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I don't understand why they weren't as big as like the Scorpions, or you know what I mean. They should have been, and maybe it was Udo, and because he does definitely have a love him or hate him kind of voice. But I've always thought he was awesome. I mean, that's track he does with those tracks he does with Raven.
AC/DC. I don't know why they wouldn't love Udo.
There you go. That's kind of my thing. But anyhow, regardless, if you're a metal fan, especially if you're a traditional metal fan, and you don't have this in your collection,
and Wolf's guitar playing is next level too. He doesn't get a lot of credit when people talk about great guitar players.
The whole band was great. I mean, Stefan Kaufman, Wolf Hoffman, Peter Baltes, great bass player who's playing in a lot of different bands. Actually playing with UDO right now. So, but yeah, German Teutonic heavy metal, just something fantastic in my opinion. So let's see. I'm looking to see if we missed any.
Paul Melander says no one's mentioned Motorhead yet.
Let's see. Scotty Adams said Blood Rock.
Fort Worth
Gary Erickson said Quad is awesome. Let's see here. Fraser Dawn said, "Oh, Blood Rock. Blood Rock is
all
great.
The Blood Rock albums are fantastic.
Well,
Blood
at
Rock,
least the first three. They got a little weird there at the end.
I even like Passages.
Really?
I do too.
Okay.
It's a little more.
I don't like it as much as the first three, but I still like it.
Yeah.
And then we got, let's see, Gary Ayrton. I think Stained Class was my gateway. Yeah, Stained Class was actually.
I almost grabbed Stained Class, but I grabbed.
I almost did too, and I tried to grab stuff that was obvious, but not that obvious. Like, if seriously, if you're a metalhead and you don't know Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, you're not a metalhead.
Yeah.
Funny enough, even though Motorhead's one of my favorite bands, I didn't even think about them with Must Have.
You know what? Metal Mayhem 777. I nearly pulled the fourth Blood Good album. It's sitting right over here because anyhow, I didn't. But
again,
Uriah Heep's another one of those first wave of British heavy metal bands.
Yeah, they're first 4 or 5.
Yep, I agree with Steve. Headbanging Zulu cannot beat except Udo rocks.
Yeah, there's some
All
Udo
right,
for you right there.
There
Unrelated.
you
there you go.
go.
I don't
You're
Okay,
know
done.
once again, I'm going to keep it deep into the 70s because this is
Are
the
you- are
third
you-
album I ever bought as a 13-year-old kid with my own money at the base PX. The Grand Funk Red album. This was what, their third? I think this was their third. It
Yes,
was
it's your
On
third.
Time, Closer to Home, and then there was the Red album. And I don't
I
know
love
of
the Red album.
any musician, or especially a bass player, that didn't want to play that little breakdown in Mr. Limousine Driver or High Falutin Woman or one of those two. But anyway, once again, this had a certain kind of heaviness with it, and Mark Farner, pretty serviceable guitar player, and he had a lot of killer leads, and so those are all elements of metal to me, and I love this record enough to have included it in my top 10.
And Scott,
And
that's got that same second Obi that yours has.
yeah,
It does.
yep.
I actually showed that on a recent video. Oh no, I haven't put it up yet. I put it on. I'm hoping that somebody in my watching my video will know what that is.
I need to
Is
ask my wife because she can read it. She can read it. I just never think about it.
But it wasn't on this record, was it? It was
No,
on
it's
something
on
else.
Jimi
No,
Hendrix.
mine was
It was
on
on a
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is some sort of a, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's cool.
Here, it's funny because I literally have it sitting right here.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it is right there, and it's got the same writing. It must be like a classic tracks or something like that. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
have your wife read it, Steve.
After the show, I'll send you a picture.
Yeah,
Steve.
send me a picture again.
Cool.
Anyway, Grand
So
Funk Red album, gotta have it. Gotta have it.
You're up, Steve.
The next one for me was the album that got me into heavy music. I was already listening to hard rock and kind of heavy metal. This was really an important album for me. This is an album that made me want to become a drummer. But Seasons in the Abyss from Slayer. There's not a bad song on here. This is the Slayer that I go to all the time still. I listen to this at least once a month. This is a 10 out of 10 album. This is my workout album. I used to listen to this every day when I was in the Persian Gulf running. It just doesn't get much better than this. This is my favorite Slayer album too. So,
well, then I'm going to interject and just throw this out because
go for it.
I think Slayer is really important.
Oh yeah,
and everybody needs at least one Slayer record in there. I couldn't decide what I was going to put, but this thing sent me way over the top. I mean, I was Haunting the Chapel and all those earlier ones.
Yeah,
I was good with those, but this thing blew my mind. And I remember wearing out a cassette in my car and having to re-record it and wearing out another one. I just couldn't believe, because it was only 26 minutes, 28 minutes, something like that. And I just didn't want it to be over. And I don't know that until Divine Intervention, they never got even close to the speed of this thing. But anyway, but I can't disagree with your choice.
Here's
Because
an interesting comment. So we think of this one. Shannon Fry, drummer for Avenger of Blood, said "Show No Mercy rules all."
I actually thought about grabbing Show No Mercy because that's the other one that I listened to the most. But
I thought it was a great album. It was.
Yeah.
It's still the one I like the best. It's just so raw and heavy and full of like that youthful energy and a little bit sloppy, but not too bad. You know what I mean? It's got that. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It doesn't have. It's not perfection, but it is perfection.
But you talk about
even Rain and Blood though. For me, Rain and Blood has the two best Slayer songs on it. But I don't think the whole album is perfect like I do with Seasons in the Abyss. I don't think there's a throwaway song on there. And I know if you guys got Rain and Blood first, you were probably more into that one. But Seasons in the Abyss was the one that got me into Slayer, and then I went backwards. And
Show No Mercy was the first one I heard, so it was new record when I was in high school, and I bought it as a new release. And my
it's an 8. I mean, this came out. When did this? This was 87 when this one came out.
Yeah, I was already out of school by then.
But think about what was coming out.
In 87, I was 11 years old, so I was just getting into the heavy music at that point, you know.
But think about what was happening in music along those lines, and I mean, Show No Mercy. I mean, that was a shocking record.
Yeah,
it was speed like we'd never heard. It was riffing like we'd never heard. those crazy trade-off leads and so forth. I mean, it was groundbreaking. But once again, I heard Rain and Blood and just thought, geez, this is got to happen every month.
Well, and the aggression and everything of Rain and Blood was just, nobody'd ever heard that before,
Yeah, they didn't want to be accused of being posers, that's for sure. And
that wasn't going to happen.
No. Scott?
All right. Yep. Another 80s band from the new wave of British heavy metal era. Raven. I thought about grabbing All for One because that's kind of their more popular record.
I have All for One sitting there. You can actually kind of see it. I almost pulled that one. I just listened to it yesterday. I ran across a bonsai pressing for $5.
Oh, dude. That's awesome.
I'm going to blow this up for a second so you can see people. And then, of course, I blew up Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I hit the wrong button, obviously. There you go. So that cover is pretty much a good indication of what the album sounds like.
Yeah.
I had that album for like a year before I realized the guys were on the cover.
They're all buried in there somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, this was what, 1980 this came out? This thing was manic. I mean, when I heard this thing as a new release, I was like, nobody sounds like this. It's just, holy cow, these guys are like ridiculous.
And they were so fast.
Over the top. Yeah. So fast. The vocals were so over the top. The guitar solo was just nuts. The drumming was freaking insane. The whole thing is just nuts. Now, this is the album I discovered them on because I bought it as a new release when I was in high school. It probably was 81 or 82, so they probably had their second or third album out by the time I discovered them, but this is the first one I bought. Anyhow, this is
yours signed?
I just love this album. I do have some signed records from them from back in the time. I believe this one is too. Yeah, it is.
I ran across 3 copies of that in a record store, and all of them were signed.
They'll sit around and sign 50 records if you bring them. They've always been cool like that.
Huh.
Well, back in the early days of the new wave of British heavy metal, a lot of them sold records signed.
Well, yeah,
right.
But this one's signed by all 3 guys: Wacko and Mark and John. I don't know how well it's going to see, but yeah, it was like that as a new release. Like Diamond Head's White album, there's all the original copies. There was no cover; they were just signed. So every cover is a little different.
Well, and they weren't all signed by the whole band. Some would have 1 signature, some would have 4, some would have 3.
Yeah.
It was so weird.
Yep, definitely. Anyhow, Raven, new wave of British heavy metal. I always refer to them as proto thrash, but
yeah, for sure.
Well, I don't even know what number we're on because I've got 4 left, but
I think you showed a couple because I've still got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 left. So
okay. Well, 1, here.
2, 3.
I know this.
That's a great.
I know this really isn't metal, but Tres Hombres by ZZ Top.
Oh man,
it once again it has a certain type of heaviness to it, and once again the riff and the simplicity of the solos. I don't know, man. This just sent me down. I kept looking for something heavier, and who hasn't?
Jalapeno colored vinyl.
That is jalapeno covered audiophile 180 gram vinyl, and it does sound good. It doesn't sound echoey like the 6-pack. Remember that the CDs came out and they sounded like you were in a bathroom with added reverb. Just terrible. But Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, I don't know how many times I air guitared to that thing, but it's infinite. And I see Fraser Dawson knows from whence Billy Gibbons came, and that was the Moving Sidewalks right here in Dallas. And they just released a whole anthology of Moving Sidewalks stuff. So keep an eye out for that because it is phenomenal. It's got stuff that was never released. It's got demo outtakes. It's got all sorts of fun stuff. So
did they even have an album?
Moving Sidewalks?
Yeah.
They had a one.
I didn't know they had any albums. I knew about them. I didn't know they had any albums.
I'll look in my collection. I think I may have an extra if you're interested. But I know on CD they released a CD of the full stuff, a bunch of outtakes and demo tracks.
So how many do you have left, Scott? I have 6. I thought I had 5. I still have 6 left.
I have 3 left.
That's fine. I just went and grabbed a couple more because I didn't grab as many as you guys did. So go ahead. Whoever's next, go next. Is it me?
Next up, I had to show Rust in Peace.
Oh yeah,
I
someone
still think
mentioned.
this is the greatest thrash album of all time. I get why people say Metallica. I get why people say Rain and Blood, but man, everything about this album is perfect.
Metal Mayhem 777 will second that note. He mentioned Rust in Peace, and man, I agree with you. That thing is a ripper.
And every song on here is a ripper. It's not like there's a couple great songs, Every song on here is a 10 out of 10. He just knocked it out of the park with this one. So that will be my next one.
Because Gary Ireton said he loves TNT by AC/DC. Probably not metal. I don't know. I considered it a metal song back then, but I guess today's people probably would not.
Okay, yeah, today's people, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, they're just rock bands.
Yeah, well, that's true. There's a guy on one of the boards who insists that Iron Maiden is nothing but a melodic rock band, which I still don't get to this day. But whatever.
Whatever.
All right.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Next up, Iced Earth, Dark Saga. Now
Such
into the
a great
90s.
album.
I've got a mixture of stuff here now. Pretty much any of the first 5 to 6 Iced Earth albums, and you're going to be good to go. I had a really hard time deciding which one I wanted to pull. I love the artwork on this one. So,
Yeah,
but
was it Horror Show that came out after that one? The one that had
No,
all the interludes in between every single song.
Horror Show came out. There was another album after this one, which was
Days in Purgatory.
It's going to drive me up a wall.
Oh, Something Wicked This Way Comes.
There you go. Thank you. So that came out, and then after that, then Horror Show came out.
Okay.
But everything up to and including Something Wicked This Way Comes, including the awesome Melancholy EP, are all essential in my opinion. I like most of the stuff after that too, but I mean, you don't really find a whole lot of metal fans who don't like the early Iced Earth stuff.
My favorite from Iced Earth is Glorious Burden, which everybody seems to dislike, but man,
I don't dislike any of them. Like I said, I like them all, but
so good.
I saw them on that tour, and I have to say that they were great live. The album, I don't think held a candle to Something Wicked or that one, Scott. But I don't know. I mean, to each their own. That had Ripper on it, right?
Which one?
That?
The Glorious.
Yes,
Burden?
that was Ripper.
That was the first one with Ripper, and then I didn't like the second one with Ripper as much. I think I felt like he just kind of threw that one together. But
well, that one's got green. The Glorious Burden has Green Face on it, right? Which I think that's one of the best Iced Earth songs ever made.
I think it's a great album. I like
War trilogy at the end of it that a lot of people don't like, that I think is fantastic.
Oh, the 45 minutes of
I love it.
Whatever.
Whose turn is it? Mine? Who went last?
You're next.
Oh, okay.
No, you just went.
Yeah,
I did Iced Earth. Yeah.
So that's right. Gosh, and Paul, I can't. I can't argue with any of those. Fate's Warning, No Exit. I'd go to that thing on the regular. Sabotage, Hall of the Mountain King.
Hall of the Mountain. Oh, I forgot about Hall of the Mountain King. That's definitely.
I almost grabbed Fate's Warning's second album because it's. But anyhow.
Anybody?
And the Gypsies. There you go.
Absolutely. Machine Gun is such a heavy song and it's just, I don't know. I love that track on there.
And last weekend I did a live stream where we did the 10 best one and done albums of all time, and Band of Gypsies was my number one.
Yeah. Well, this thing, it gave me the I mean, not that Made in Japan by Deep Purple, I pulled that out too, but I thought, well, I've already got a Deep Purple in there, so what would be second to or right up there with? And this is what I came up with. I love this album, and once again, there is a second part. There is a Band of Gypsies 2. If you don't have it, it's sort of gettable, but it's worth having because it's in addition to this. And you're right, Scott. Machine Gun and Power of Soul. They're all. I mean, I can't speak enough about how great this record is, especially since. I mean, most of his studio stuff, I think the stuff that he just performed live in the studio was much, much more creative and better than the stuff that he practiced and redid and went back and re-recorded and whatever. I mean, this is raw metal fury, in my opinion.
And I don't know why Machine Gun is such a great song. I don't know why it doesn't make like the greatest, like whenever they do a greatest hits, that song is never there, which blows me away because I think it's one of the best songs he ever wrote.
I mean, I've got, like you, just anything Hendrix, I'll grab it, bootlegs. But I mean, this is, one I just obviously showed, but this thing's great just because of the live stuff on there. It's just fantastic. But anyhow, who's up? Steve.
So I went back and forth with which Judas Priest to grab. I could have grabbed any of them. Judas Priest is my favorite band, and actually these two are kind of tied. Iron Maiden, the debut, and Screaming for Vengeance. Again, just a perfect album. It's one that every time I pull it out, I end up listening to it like 10 times. Just so many memories. It's such a great album. And then this. So I was.
Well, Unleash, let me say one thing real quick before we move on about that particular album. When people say, what one album do you think defines heavy metal?
Oh, yeah.
Vengeance. Everything about it. The songs, the vocals, the cover art.
Well, and this album really brought...
the band.
This is an album that really brought metal onto the radio. There were some metal, some AC/DC and stuff here and there that made it on the radio.
Screaming but you weren't getting
played by every station everywhere. It was such a big album for metal.
You got another thing coming, and you didn't even hear like the songs like now you hear Breaking the Law and all those. I never heard those on the radio before that album came out.
And then the other one, I was so I don't know what it was. When I was younger, I had no interest in Paul Di'Anno era Iron Maiden. I loved the later stuff. I loved Bruce Dickinson. He was my favorite. As I've gotten older, though, Di'Anno is where it's all at for me. The punk attitude, the sound of this album, I can't get enough of it. I still listen to this at least once. This stays in my car. I had to pull this out of my truck. This stays in my truck. I play this all the time still. 40 years later? I still can't get enough of that album.
Have you seen Glenn Rogers' list?
Yeah, I did. I'll put it up in a second. I was waiting for him to be finished, but yeah, Glenn Rogers said UFO Stranger Night, absolutely. Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, yep. I'll take any of the early Zeppelin albums from on there. Thin Lizzy Jailbreak, yep. Iron Maiden Killers, absolutely. Saxon, Power and the Glory, yep. Rush 2112, won't get an argument from me on that either. I might switch out that one for the second album though, Fly By Night.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say the same thing.
I'm with
Judas Priest, British Steel. Again, there's so many great Priest albums. I probably would have gone with Stained Class, but throwing with British Steel. Highway to Hell, absolutely, and Van Halen's first album. I mean that.
I almost grabbed Van Halen 1, and I almost grabbed British Steel at the last minute. I changed it to Screaming for Vengeance.
I like Van Halen too, but yeah, I can't argue Van Halen 1.
For those who don't know who Glenn Rogers is,
Mr. Hyrax and
Hyrax, Heretic. Oh, hang on a second, guys. Hang on. You're gonna lose me in a second. Here we go. My computer all of a sudden said battery running low. I was like, oops. I'm on my laptop, so I had a battery on. Anyhow, Glenn Rogers, this is his new project. Hugh Machine, got to put a plug in for it because this is a fantastic, straightforward heavy metal album, kind of bordering on thrash metal at times, but mostly staying within that, U.S. power metal sound, comparable to maybe Metal Church, Heretic, that kind of stuff. So anyhow, Glenn's an awesome dude. Just talked to him on the phone yesterday. Am I up?
Yep. Have you guys had Glenn? When's Glenn going to be on the show?
We've had him on before. We can have him on again.
Yeah. Yep.
I knew you were going to bring that one up. You talk about killer artwork. Gosh, I love that.
Yeah. This is one of those ones I got multiple copies of.
Yep.
I've had the picture disc forever, but I snagged a recent reissue because it just sounds so good. I have dogs arguing in my room, if you can't tell. Sorry. But anyhow, I describe these guys as epic metal. Kind of hard to compare them to anybody else. The vocals are very different. A bit like Trouble's vocals, a little bit, because it has that rasp to it. But obviously, it doesn't sound exactly like Trouble. Actually, they don't sound anything like Trouble. But vocalists, they have that. It's just the only similarity is that raspiness to the voice. So, but yeah, epic metal. This is what 81.
Yeah, something like that. 80? I think they're playing. I think they're playing Hell's Heroes in Houston and that'll be it for them. I think they're
they're going away. They just put out the new album, which I have behind me as well. But just a fantastic. I mean, you can't go wrong with really any of the Serious Uncle albums. But I've always been a fan of the first album. So yeah, this is the collector's edition. So if you don't have this, you're not a collector. You guys have the picture disc version of it?
I don't. I have an original pressing.
I'm gonna have to revoke your metal cards now.
Oh, geez. Well, you're gonna really revoke my metal card now because I've got 2 selections left and one. Well,
Go for it.
You had talked about a perfect album, and here it is, right here. This thing has speed. It has heaviness. It has melodic elements to it. It has the whole space rock idea. Boston is just one of those things. If you want to really know how to be an epic band, this is a good place to start, or at least this album is. And I bought this early on. In fact, it was the second album was one of the last things I bought before I took a 2-year hiatus out to California. But this thing, I just, man, there's talk about no filler and all killer. Well, here it is. Even with their sweeping, the foreplay and all that stuff in between songs, it's just perfect.
I agree.
Not a bad song, and I think everybody should own it because, like I said, it'll teach you what a real record should sound like and how it should be put together, and the structure of the songs. I just think it's brilliant. So
that's another one. I'd been listening to that for decades before I realized those were guitars on the cover.
That's funny.
I don't really drink alcohol much. I'm not a drinker, but I was at one of my son's parties at his house, and they gave me a drink, and I went ahead and drank it, and it was strong. So I immediately caught more than a buzz, and I'm like, yeah, that's not good. I don't want to get sick. So I went and I laid down, and he was playing that album in the background while everybody's there, and I was like, it was like the greatest sound ever. I was so enjoying that record because I don't know why, but it was just like I was just sitting there with my eyes closed.
You're completely relaxed.
Record. I was so relaxed, and it sounded so good. And I didn't get sick, so there you
go. So funny enough, you mentioned Trouble because this is probably in my top 5 all-time favorite metal albums.
Really,
the second self-titled Trouble album.
I wouldn't argue with you. I love that album.
This from the moment I heard it, it's always been a favorite. I play this all the time. Trouble's one of my favorite bands. I listen to all their stuff all the time, but this one, every time I hear a Trouble song, I have to pull this out and listen to this album. It's just so good.
Is that with Eric Wagner, by the way?
Or is that with Eric Wagner?
Okay.
This was he was
1990. I think
more albums after this with Eric.
Yeah, that was their 4th album, 1990. I think.
Yeah, this was 90 or 91. Yeah,
because they had one with was it Kyle Thomas or somebody else, and
they only did one album with the current singer, and it's my least favorite of their albums.
Didn't they do an album with Solitude Alternatives vocalist too?
Robert Lowe? No,
like a live album or something.
I
thought the live album was the same vocalist as that other album.
It might be. I might be just mixing up things in my head.
I thought it was Kyle Thomas, but that might be my mistake. Speaking of Solitude Aeternis, anybody excited that they might play again?
Yeah, I'd love to see them live.
Yeah.
So how many records you got left there, Steve?
I got 2 left.
How many you got there, John?
I got 1.
All right, so I'm going to show a few of these, and I'll keep the last 2 over here for the end. I got a couple of 80s records. I'll show those now. I'll be quick, but Anvil, Forged in Fire. You could have gone Metal on Metal. I could have gone any of the first 3 albums. The first album has a huge Ted Nugent vibe to it. Huge Ted Nugent vibe, which is the reason that Lips plays the hollow body guitars when he was, the hollow body V's, because he was a big Nugent fan. But Metal on Metal, everybody seems to know. It's got their, one of their biggest hits on there. But I think Forged in Fire is one of the best albums ever recorded. Every song on here is fantastic, including the title track, which kind of has a little bit of a different vibe to it. It's got a more of a I don't know what the word is. It's just slow and melodic, and I just dig it. But I'm a huge Anvil fan. I have it since I bought their first album, Deadly
Oh
Blessing.
man, that thing rips.
Yep, Ascend from the Cauldron. Ski is an amazing vocalist. He also was in a band called. Let me see if I can remember what the other band he was in was called. Crap, I can't remember. It doesn't matter anyhow. You know what? I'm gonna look because it'll drive me up a freaking wall.
I saw Deadly
Faith
Blessing.
Factor. He was in Faith Factor.
I saw Deadly Blessing with Revenant and Morbid Angel in New Jersey once, and
Wow.
I thought it can't get too much better, and I was just waiting for Overkill to show up since we were in that part of the world, but they never did.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, by today's standards, probably people would call this U.S. power metal. When I bought this back in the day, it was just heavy metal, but whatever. It's just.
Does that have Deliver Us from Evil on it, or is that the EP?
No, this is the full length.
I'm trying to think.
I don't know. I can't remember at the top of my head which song is on here. And of course, this is there's a picture of the band on the back. But you notice what's not on the back? A track listing.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
And then 1990. I play this thing a lot, and this is another one of those albums you say I'm not even kidding. I think I have like 12 different vinyl copies of this.
Yeah, but you did the artwork on 9 of them.
I probably did, and I've got test pressings, and I've got the CDs. I've got multiple. I probably got like 5 or 6 CDs on top of it.
But that thing does shred. So. That
one that crossed over. I mean, that was all over Headbangers Ball when it came out.
Yeah, matter of fact, I remember seeing what's his name, the drummer from Metallica. He was doing a guest VJing on Headbangers Ball, and he played this as one of his favorite tracks of the years and it was
and I know it was. But I know it was Forbidden Fruit to be a Christian metal band. It had bad connotations, but who knew? Deliverance just lopped your gourd off and kept going. I mean, that thing is relentless.
Yep. Anyhow, so I got a few more, but I'll wait for the next one.
Well,
and I'll go quickly because I know we're getting close.
I know Fraser's got. He knows the gig is up. It's all over.
He's like, "Come on, man, Mr. Carcass, come on for Texas."
This is my last.
Yeah, we knew it was coming.
Osric Tentacles. Thank you, Tony Clem. Live Underslunky. This is the first thing I heard that made me jump all over the to get on the Osric Tentacles tour bus, and once again, this has elements of metal, heaviness, ethereal. You know, it's kind of like Opeth, or it's kind of like Blood Incantation in some respects. So, but this was 1990. It's got a let's see, yeah, something like that, like 89, 90. And they have other live albums out here. But if you want to start with Osric Tentacles, jump on this one, and then go from there. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Just ask Scott. He gave it a try, and now he's hooked.
Since that was your last, I'll go ahead or your last one. I'll show my last two. But this next one, I sent this to Scott when we first started trading stuff. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. I think this is one of the heaviest albums and darkest albums ever written. But this is Oddfellows Rest from Crowbar.
Oh, dude, that is heavy.
This album this is the first album where I realized how heavy something can be while being slow at the same time. And the dark, he was dealing with he was real heavy into his alcoholism at this point, and it comes through in the lyrics. Super dark, super heavy. I love everything that Crowbar ever released, but this is the album that you have to have. This is a 12 out of 10 for me. I love this album. And it's definitely a must-have. And then last but not least, I had to mention Black Sabbath. But the Black Sabbath, the album that really got me into them was Master of Reality. I love the first couple albums, don't get me wrong. I still play them all the time. Children of the Grave is one of the greatest songs ever written. Every time I hear that, I just get hyped up. I mean, you had
every song on there.
Children of the Grave, After Forever.
I even like Embryo. I know people don't like that track, but I love Embryo.
Oh, I love Embryo. There's nothing. Into the Void. I mean, this is just
that's my favorite Black Sabbath
album
as well.
Here is just perfect. So
I thought about pulling that one, but I pulled the first album just because that was the beginning of it all.
I thought about that, but I knew one of you guys would pull it, and I really wanted to. Like I said, "Children of the Grave" is still one of my favorite songs of all time.
Do you still have more to show?
That's it.
So I have. You have one more to show, John?
No, I'm done.
Okay, cool. Then I'll show the last one real quick. I honestly pulled this one out to put in the top 10. I think it's such a killer album. Nobody seems to know about it, and I don't know why. But Banshee's Mindslave. George Call is an amazing vocalist. He is one of the best, more modern day vocalists for that classic metal sound. Whether it's Cloven Hoof or Aska or this Banshee record, this thing is freaking heavy.
That should have been a huge album. I mean, it really is a perfect album.
It's so good. It's been put out several times on several different labels too. It's just, but nobody knows about it, and I don't understand why. It's such a great album. It's so freaking heavy, and it kind of reminds me a lot of the first two Dio Black Sabbath albums. Not that it sounds like Black Sabbath, but it's got that same heaviness to it, but it's got the same kind of hooks to it. And the vocals are just your jaw drops on the floor, just like when I first heard Dio singing in Sabbath. So anyhow, these two are probably lesser known, but I think this is an amazing album. I wish it was more known.
Oh, that's so good.
Is that Greg? Greg Chason?
Yeah,
this is Greg Chason, and
from Badlands.
I think him and Glenn are in a tie for the most bands that anybody's ever played in. Because they've both been in about 100 different bands.
It's pretty much the Badlands rhythm section, because the drummer was, who played on the second and third Badlands album, is also on here. And then the vocalist on here is Robin Kyle Basari. Man, the guy can sing. I mean, he's somewhere. He literally falls somewhere between David Coverdale and Ian Gillan. I hear both of those in his voice when he sings.
Just that's a great record,
and the bluesiness of that record is just fantastic.
Yeah, really it's like a slightly heavier Badlands, honestly. Yeah. And then lastly, one of my all-time favorite records. They only ever put out one full-length studio album, but Recon Behind Enemy Lines. If you like that Deliverance record, Weapons of Our Warfare, this one follows right along. Vocalist sounds a lot like Queensryche EP era Jeff Tate. Matter of fact, the whole album kind of has that. It kind of rides that fence between speed metal and US power metal. Some fast songs, some more mellow songs. But yeah, if you play the songs Behind Enemy Lines, the title track on this thing, if that track could have easily been on Weapons of Our Warfare by Deliverance. In fact, Jimmy Brown plays on the track on here. Jimmy Brown from Deliverance does. So, and then oddly enough, I think three of the members of Recon ended up in Deliverance. So, including George Ochoa, the guitar player, who also was the producer and guitar player on Weapons of Our Warfare. So that's how you get your connection. Anyhow, Behind Enemy Lines. It's weird. This album. It's been put out numerous times by several labels. I know Rocks alone has put it out on vinyl 3 times, and it keeps selling out every time he puts it out. So anyhow, just a
Fraser, Hellstar is great too. What's the Hellstar with the logo embossed on the CD case?
Sins of the Past.
That's it.
Oh my god! Yeah,
that's basically a redo of all their previous songs, plus some cover tunes. I think they do a Scorpions track, they do a Saxon track, Heavy Metal Thunder. They do what is the Saxon track they do? Or they
Metal Mayhem. King Diamond would never make my list of essential albums. I think the band. I like the band, but he's just got one of those voices that so many people would not like. I didn't like. It took me a long time to be able to handle his voice.
I mean,
here you go, Gary Arrington, Red Sea, one of the best albums no one has ever heard.
Yeah.
And then also Gary Arrington, Metal Mayhem, Scott, the Banshee album rules. Yes, it is great.
I was going to say the metal or the Merciful Fate, Into the Unknown. I think that is of the two bands, or the solo stuff or the band stuff. I think that probably is the pinnacle of all his recordings, but that's just me. But
actually, I think the best thing they ever released was Nuns Have No Fun. I think that's one of the best EPs ever released. But It's not
Damien,
everybody's bag of tea. I don't think it's something everybody needs to have.
No.
I nearly grabbed Motley Crue's first album to show, but
I
it's
almost grabbed
just
Dr. Feelgood.
there's just so many albums, so many different styles.
Dude, I
If
can't
Rob was
disagree with you, Steve. I think it's a
Yeah.
good record. It's a good
if Metal
record.
Rob would have been here, you probably would have seen Motley Crue and Doc, and I love all those bands too. But
Dirty
he
Looks
really
and
loves those bands. So yeah, Dirty
Well, Motley
Looks.
Crue,
Yeah.
and I've talked about it. Motley Crue was the band that made me a heavy metal, that got me listening to heavy metal in '83. They are the band that got me listening to it. So, but you know, as much as I love them, and I still see them, no matter how bad they sound on vocals, no matter how many backing tracks I use, I still see them every time they come to town. So,
Well, you can't fault them. They put on a good show. There's no doubt. I mean,
I still have a blast every time they come.
they are like, I mean, they are the kiss of their time as far as the stage show goes.
that's a good way to put it.
One,
Yeah,
I mean, people,
I'm just talking about the show itself, not talking about the music, just talking about the showmanship on the stage. And
Sure.
the drum riser coming up and doing all the flips and the flames, and they just have so many things going on during their shows. It's
well, not just that. I mean, 90% of what the bands did after they came out was copying stuff that they did. You know, whether it's the drum stuff, whether it's the look. You know, they every time they change their look, most of hard rock and metal change their look along with them. You know, I'm not talking about the thrash guys, because thrash guys, we were pretty much jeans, high tops, and metal shirts, but everybody else changed with what Motley Crue did.
I was talking to one of those guys in the new wave of thrash metal bands. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but it was funny because he was wearing that whole getup. He had the tight jeans on and the belts, like you're talking about that young band, and he had on these had to be vintage Adidas high tops on, the white shoes with the black stripes on it. And he's like, yeah, this is the metal uniform. Everybody who was a metalhead in the 80s wore these shoes. I said, no, that's not the case. What do you mean? I said, everybody wore shoes like that. It didn't matter if you're metal or not. I said, Run DMC wrote a song about it.
Right.
It wasn't just metal. It was just the 80s. Everybody wore white high tops. That's what he did.
And it wasn't just Adidas. Black, but... it was Nikes. It was Adidas.
Yeah, Puma. Pumas. Yeah, it was Puma. Was another big one back then. Yeah. Anyhow, I just find it funny that they thought it was like you had to have those brand of shoes.
Well, it's funny. And then the what were they? Then when the Doc Martens came out, though, everybody switched to Doc. It didn't matter what kind of metalhead you were listening. It was Doc Martens or monkey boots. It seemed like everybody switched as soon as those came out.
And of course, Frazier says his admission is, "I wear Crocs to metal shows." Why? Why do we need to? Unless they say Slayer on them, I guess that you're.
I bet Gene Simmons has tried to make a deal with Crocs for some Kiss Crocs.
I'm sure.
I don't wear Crocs ever, so
I have never owned a pair.
Neither. If I want to sit home and relax in shoes, I wear bare paws. Those are what I like. So anyhow, on stage, I never wore the high tops. I tried for a while wearing boots on stage, but I ran around so much and did so much headbanging and would make myself dizzy. And I was like, man, I can't do these heels on stage. I don't know how Kiss does this crap. So I started wearing just black basketball shoes just because it gave me grip and I didn't fall over.
Yeah,
I didn't care what my shoes looked like.
For me, it was Docs. I always had Docs on when I was playing drums.
I played bare feet. Sorry.
I didn't
you were
care.
Playing in 1974 with the hippies.
That's right. That's exactly right. It didn't matter how cold it was.
The little Dio frayed. What do they call those? The jackets.
Like the Aussie. I love you, everyone.
Yeah.
The suede jacket with the fringe. Those are awesome. All right. Well, we're over our hour, so I guess we're done, right? Everybody showed everything you want. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
Nope.
Before we get into more fashion tips,
I would suggest rewatching the show so they could, get a couple new. I mean, I've been taking notes. In fact, I'm going to look for that recon behind enemy lines because that sounds like it's right up my alley. But everything else that's been mentioned, I have. So, and even some of the lists that were posted, including Glenn Rogers' list, I'm like, check. Yeah, I got it. Check. So this wasn't one of those shows where it's like, oh gosh, I've never even heard of that. But except for the recon, but
that's one of those albums that Scott's convinced me to buy 3 different times. Because I think
It's-
George Ochoa did it the first time, and then he found an original pressing for me, and I got that. And then did Rob do the last mix?
Rob did the last one, and man, that sounds
And
so
the last
good.
one sounds fantastic. It's killer.
Yeah,
He did
there's
a great
many.
job on
Like
it.
I said, there's a lot of different versions out there, so they all sound good. There's none that sound bad, but yeah. So anyhow, well, right on. That's it, I guess, for episode number 206 of the Metal Roundtable. We know how we do it. It is going to be
Metal will
will
prevail.
prevail. And then I'll leave you all hanging while I figure out how to do this ending.
Oh yeah.